In an eerie repeat of Game 3, Miami hung tight with Philadelphia through three quarters until the Sixers capitalized on a Heat scoreless stretch to start the fourth quarter, and James Harden went to work. Despite another strong night from Jimmy Butler, Miami's three-point shooting was once again non-existent, and the Heat dropped Game 4 with a series now tied at 2 games apiece. We'll break down what went wrong, the absence of Duncan Robinson, and much more on today's playoff edition of Locked On Heat.
Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Monday edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat. However, you may be listening or watching on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host Wes Goldberg. Today's episode brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Miami went into Sunday's Game 4 needing to win on the road, a challenge made tougher because they would be without backup center Dwayne Dedmon out due to an unspecified illness. But the Heat were competitive early on, getting some nice production from Bam Adebayo, who looked much more aggressive than he did in Game 3, as well as Victor Oladipo, who provided an immediate spark using his speed to draw fouls and finished with 7 points in the first quarter. The Sixers pulled away in the second quarter behind James Harden, but Jimmy Butler was once again sensational, getting to the rim, finding soft spots in the Sixers' defense from mid-range, and, of course, getting to the line. In the third quarter, Jimmy was even better, scoring 17 of his game-high 40 points and keeping the Heat to just a 4-point deficit. But in a strange and nearly identical replay to Game 3, Jimmy sat out the start of the fourth quarter for way too long, and the Sixers took advantage of a 3.5-minute scoreless stretch by Miami to extend their lead to 14, and Miami was playing catch-up for the rest of the way. Jimmy and Bam put up huge efforts to keep Miami close, scoring a combined 17 points in the fourth quarter, but it was the three-point shot that was once again the difference for each team. Miami got as close at 5 at different times during the fourth quarter, but every time they got a rare stop and an opportunity to cut it even closer, they missed another shot from the perimeter, finishing the night just a woeful 7 of 35 from long range, 20%, while Harden just seemed to come up with big shot after big shot, scoring 16 points in the period, including 4 made three-pointers. And Miami lost Game 4, 116-108, with a series tied at 2 games apiece. After the game, Erik Spoelstra talked about the three-point shooting because that was really the difference for both teams. And while he was asked about Duncan Robinson, who once again did not play a single minute and downplayed the shooting struggles to some degree, instead, Spo pointed to the Miami's defensive issues late in the game. Here's exactly what he had to say.
And then obviously right now, you look at the percentage, that's an easy conclusion. But, we still had some really good looks. And the guys that got the looks are some of, we have great three-point shooters on this team. It just seemed like it's kind of flipped, I think it seems like Philly was saying the same thing in 2 games in Miami. We're saying the same thing here. But look, we pride ourselves on being able to find different solutions to win. And this would, we felt like we could have pushed, to be able to get this one in the grind, in the mud. But again, those big threes and big shots they hit down the stretch just didn't allow that.
There you have it. Not sure I buy it exactly, Wes, because I think it's hard not to have a conversation about Miami's three-point shooting and separate Duncan Robinson not playing because he is one of the better shooters in the game. He hasn't played a single second in this series, certainly not tonight. And conversely, Erik Spoelstra said, well, it wasn't really the three-point shooting. Easy to point to that, as he said in the clip. And yet it was the defensive issues that led to some big shots from Harden and others. I thought those shots were mostly well defended. You have to give credit to Harden. Unfortunately, he was able to hit big shots. One time when he was isolated on Bam Adebayo, thought he could take a step back, fade away three. And Bam defended as well as you possibly could, still nailed the shot, and still, again, provided that kind of cushion, that momentum shift in Philadelphia's favor. When they were playing ahead anyway, all they needed was a big shot to just continue to kill Miami's spirit. Conversely, on the other end of the floor, Miami's going to get a shot from anybody. So where do you stand on that? I mean, again, how do we get into this conversation about the three-point shooting and not talk about Duncan Robinson?
Well, I mean, it's hard, but also, you look at what Spo said, and he said, we have capable 3-point shooters, but those shooters weren't making shots. You have Tyler Herro, 1 of 5, Max Strus, 2 of 5, and one of those was a garbage time 3 that doesn't count. Kyle Lowry, 0 for 6 tonight, and obviously he's dealing with the hamstring concern we'll talk about later, I'm sure. But you have a bunch of really good shooters. They weren't making shots. Something that I was thinking about in this game, David, was it was a copy and paste from game 3, right? Where you had Philadelphia making like half of their threes, Miami not making any of theirs. Jimmy Butler keeps them in the game for the entire third quarter. Then the fourth quarter starts. Jimmy Butler's on the bench, and then the Heat go they go scoreless for almost 3+ minutes, and then the game slips away, and that's it, right? And that's the game. And that was the same thing that happened in game 3. And not only is it that, right? Not only is it just an exact replica of game 3, it's giving me vibes of that 4-game losing streak, which I hate to say.
Yeah.
That the way that the Heat revamped the rotation, we talked about it so much, where you just put shooters all around Jimmy Butler. They're not doing that. They are back into the Victor Oladipo stuff. And Oladipo is not the reason they lost tonight, but it's the spacing isn't there. It's not what it was when you revamp the rotation, and this is Miami's biggest problem. Their best players are not their best 3-point shooters, and you are so reliant on somebody like Kyle Lowry, who is so important defensively at the point of attack, so important in terms of setting the table on offense. He's been pretty streaky as a 3-point shooter all season long. You're really relying on Max Strus as part of that starting lineup. You're basically staggering Tyler Herro and Jimmy Butler. So Tyler Herro's not creating a ton of space for Jimmy Butler because he's mostly – but they do play together quite a bit, especially late in games. Tyler Herro missed a couple of easy buckets too late, and his struggles were really pronounced in this game, and we'll touch on that later during Blame Pie. But this is just – I don't know if it's fluke. If it's a fluke if it happens 2 games in a row, because it feels so big in this moment, but it is still just 2 games. But Miami has missed 51 of their last 65 3-point attempts. That is an unbelievable mark. And you've got to think that it will – something about playing back in Miami on Tuesday night should fix things. Also, just normal, shooting averages, and just the fact that I can't imagine that they shoot 20% from 3-point range for 3 straight games. I just can't imagine that happening. But it also – I don't like the spacing. I don't love – the way it looks on the court. Yeah, you missed a bunch of open looks, and if you make half of those open looks that you missed, the Heat probably win this game. Okay, maybe it's just that simple, but I think more needs to be done than just hoping you make threes.
Isn't it kind of the chicken and the egg thing though? If like Strus hits that 3, isn't he going to draw a Tobias Harris or a Tyrese Maxey out to the perimeter to allow more spacing in the painted area?
I guess. I mean, it's not like Jimmy Butler still scored 40 points. Like it didn't hurt him that much. Maybe you're right. Like I just it feels like the offense was better than it was in game 3.
Yeah.
And maybe you're right. Maybe like once you start hitting those shots, and so it's really hard. Like the further I got away from game 3, David, I don't know about you, the less concerned I was about it. It just felt like those misses felt so loud in the moment. You're like, what are they going to do if Joel Embiid is back and all this? I'm like, you know what? They're not going to shoot like that again in game 4, and this will be a series. And by the way, they were still in this game for the most part, but maybe it is just that simple that you come home to Miami and you're not missing every single one of your 3-pointers. It seems like
it's just hard to get past 4 of 21 combined shooting from Lowry, 0 for 6, Strus 2 of 5, 1 of 5 from Oladipo, 1 of 5 from Tyler Herro. Like these are the guys that you need to hit. I mean, look, each one of those guys certainly capable of hitting at least one more shot. That's the case. Miami wins by 4, right? And it never comes down to just something that easy, but it kind of sort of feels like it does. And I look, to Spo's point again, I understand. There were some defensive breakdowns. Harden made some big plays. They couldn't get those stops. You still score 108 points.
Yeah,
maybe that's enough, but you kind of need.
You got to assume that you're going to assume that James Harden is going to break you down at this point, right? You're going to assume that Joel Embiid is going to break you down, and they're going to have big buckets, and they're going to make tough shots. The one egregious one was the backdoor cut to Tobias Harris at the end there, and I don't know if Miami was doing some sort of box and one at the end. It was a kind of a weird zone that they had. Whatever they were trying, it was specifically geared towards stopping Harden. I know we'll talk about Harden later on, but
Yeah.
I mean, he was as much a reason why the game went the way it did than Embiid or the poor 3-point shooting. He was awesome down the stretch for them. So, yeah, I try not to worry too much about the shooting stuff, but it does, like, going back to the Duncan Robinson thing, like, tonight was a night where it was like, you might as well throw him out there. Eric Spoelstra was not answering the question. He basically dodged the question. He said, yeah, I considered it. Obviously, he didn't put him
Didn't
in.
do it.
So
Okay.
I don't know that we have another situation. Hopefully, we don't have another situation this dire where Eric Spoelstra, if it was this bad and Eric Spoelstra just only considered it and still didn't ultimately put Duncan Robinson in, he's probably not going to see time in this series. I don't know. I understand the reasoning behind it. His foul proneness would be a
Yeah.
huge issue in this series, and I understand
Sort
that
of.
Eric Spoelstra is probably scared of just doing that. I get it, but it felt like tonight they could have used him for sure.
I think we've seen the flip side of that script though. Duncan, like even when he's not knocking down shots, his ability to change the defense so much because of his incredible gravity, like that's something Max does not have. Lowry doesn't have it. Tyler doesn't have it. It's just different. Like you just have to send multiple guys out, especially when Duncan's coming off a screen after screen, just resetting, changing the way the offense flows. The defense is drawn to him. All of a sudden, it just moves things around differently. I'm flummoxed. I don't know what it is. And you brought up a good point. The foul prone nature at a point where you're already going to put Embiid and Harden on the line 27 times. Sure, I get it. But, I mean, they're getting to the line 27 times anyway with him not on the floor. It's like, at this point, throw him out there. Give him a couple of minutes. Have a couple of shots go down. Maybe that's a difference. At 5 minutes, if Gabe Vincent's struggling out there, if Kyle's struggling out there, and it looks like he may not even be available for Game 5, who knows? He talked about it after the show, after the game, and he wasn't quite sure. The plan is at this point for him to be available to get treatment in Miami and see where he progresses from here. But somewhere down the stretch, I mean, again,
but James Harden doesn't play all 48 minutes. Put him in when James Harden is on the bench, and you don't have to worry. It's not as big of an issue. It's a little weird. It's very strange how steadfast Eric Spoelstra is in not playing Duncan Robinson. He has his reasons, right? I'm with you. I think that there's so much that he can do, especially in a couple of games like we had in Game 3 and Game 4.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about who deserves the most blame for tonight's loss, and then where we are in the panic meter, because it's a lot higher than it was just a couple days ago. I'll tell you that much. But before we do that, just a reminder that BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball, and this weekend's Run to the Roses. Kentucky Derby. I didn't watch who won that, but I'm sure it was an exciting race. I'm sure the odds against Miami are a lot higher now than they were just a couple of days ago too. So make sure you place your bets now. If it's not going to happen at Heat in 5, but if you're still a believer in Heat in 6, now's the time to go place your bet. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Back here with Locked On Heat. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. Also, make sure to go check out the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. Host Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and the author of the NBA Big Board newsletter gives you an in-depth look into the NBA draft, mock draft, player rankings, and of course, he's got big boards. It's free. It's available wherever you get podcasts. David.
Yep.
I got that losing feeling, which means I'm in the kitchen. I'm going to eat my feelings, and I'm going to whip up a big old heaping blame pie here. A lot of blame, I think, to go around. We were talking about Eric Spoelstra a little bit there. I know that you placed some of the blame on him after Game 3 on Friday night. I think we have to do that again. To go back to the Duncan Robinson point there, too, it just felt like Miami had a lot of success tonight running those dribble handoffs to Max Strus and Tyler Herro off of Bam screens, getting Joel Embiid to come out a little bit, space the floor a little bit more, and then almost get behind him, make action happen behind Joel Embiid, backdoor cuts and those sort of things. Even when Joel Embiid didn't come all the way up to the level of the screen and he just dropped the way that he typically does for Philadelphia's defense, it opened up that entire mid-range area, that space that Tyler Herro got a lot of good looks and missed a lot of looks from too. But you've got to think, if Duncan Robinson is running off those screens, that mid-range area is only going to be larger, right? Like he creates so much space. But not only was the Duncan Robinson decision kind of egregious, questionable, whatever. Eric Spoelstra pulled a lot of levers defensively down the stretch. He tried Oladipo on Harden, tried PJ Tucker on him, tried Jimmy Butler on him for a little bit. Like I said, tried some sort of box and one zone at the end there, tried just some normal, traditional type of zone, mixed up the placement of the players in the zone, going over the screens, going under the screens, playing him to one side, like all these things. And I just don't know that you can blame Spo for James Harden going off. I just think you have to give credit to James Harden. I actually thought their defense against Joel Embiid was really good, the way that they were fronting him and denying him. There was a lot to like, I thought, from Spo's performance coaching-wise tonight. It's just the Duncan Robinson decision is so loud, and I don't know if that means that we still have to give him some blame. Also not knowing if Duncan Robinson would have fixed all of Miami's issues.
That's fair. We got some blowback. I guess, specifically for pointing at Spo. It's not like it was his fault in Game 3 that those players were not hitting their shots. You could say the same thing about tonight. But, he was able to pull just the right strings defensively, at least for the most part. You figure he has to do the same job offensively. And somehow, when you have so many players struggling so completely and blatantly from three-point range, you've got to try something else. I mean, it's not like this is an unproven player either. Like just 2 years ago, he was in the finals hitting big shots against the Los Angeles Lakers and coming up huge and being a key player for that playoff run. How do you overlook that considering all the things that he's done? And now it's just it's become so easy to just take him out because he did struggle. He was not as phenomenal as he was just last season or the year before that. But I mean, hey, you can't shoot 40% all the time. Yeah. But you know what? Maybe it would have been tonight. Maybe he hits a couple of shots. Maybe he goes 3 of 7. Again, that's the difference right there. I mean, you don't have to be elite. You don't have to even go 6 of 7 or 6 of 8, which we know he's certainly capable of. But if he just hits 3 shots, that's a huge difference in Miami's favor. But then again, here we are giving out plain pie, and Spo, ever the masochist, decides he likes the taste of it and wants to go for another slice. So he gets a small 5% slice. Maybe a quarter or an eighth of a pie.
Fair enough. Look, I'm going to be pretty easy about this. I'm giving a third of this blame pie to Tyler Herro. I'm giving a third of it to Max Strus. I'm giving a third of it to Kyle Lowry. When Duncan Robinson's not in the game, when Caleb Martin's not playing, when Gabe Vincent is limited minutes that are basically based on Kyle Lowry's overall well-being and availability, the three-point shooting comes down to those 3 guys. If you get, like, PJ Tucker is a corner three-point shooter. He made a 3 tonight, but he does so much more for the Heat than just the three-point shooting that I don't think that ultimately it falls on him how Miami performs from beyond the arc. Same goes for Jimmy Butler. If he's making threes, it's bonus. I think he made the most threes on the team tonight, right?
He did.
So that's a problem. He was tied with him and Max Strus made 2, and like I said, Strus made a fake one at the end that nobody cares about. So it's those 3 guys. Like, that's the three-point shooting. You could blow it up. You could be like, Oladipo did this, like whatever. Like, those 3 guys have to make their shots, and they had so many open looks. Like, where I thought, especially Herro, Strus, and Lowry compared to Oladipo. Like, Oladipo, his looks were a little bit more contested, a little bit more off the dribble that he was doing. I mean, he had some catch and shoot opportunities, but he's again,
he got to the line 10 times.
He makes, and exactly. Herro, Strus, Lowry. And you could actually argue that Herro should get a lot more than Strus and Lowry because Lowry's on the bum hamstring. He's doing his best. Strus is, at the end of the day, a catch and shoot guy. Tyler Herro missed a couple of really big buckets at the end there. Made some questionable reads out of traps. Out of Philadelphia's traps in the second half. So I almost give Tyler Herro like 50%, and then you could split up the rest of it between Strus, Lowry, and Spo, however you like. But they got to be better. They have to be better.
You could also put some blame / credit to Philadelphia's players because, I mean, you have to be honest. They had a really good game.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, if we're being
Matisse
real
Thybulle, he's been really, really good as the quote-unquote defensive stopper. He has been hounding Tyler constantly. He matches his minutes to Tyler's, and he's been very effective at challenging everything he does. And for the most part, obviously he's been very effective. And then Harden, I did not expect it. I texted you about it. I said, he got foul trouble early on in the first quarter, and he gets a little bit more rest than he might normally get. And I'm thinking, does this mean that he might have more energy late in the game? And that wound up being the case because he seemed energized. And you never want to give a player with his history. We haven't seen this version of Harden very often, certainly not in the playoffs, but yet it's still a possibility, and it was evident tonight that he's still very much an elite level scorer. He didn't need a lot of space. Again, he was defended very, very well for the most part, and just knocking down shot after shot, getting to the line, getting to the rim with ease.
That step back is back. Like that was a huge problem for Miami, and then all of a sudden they start closing out really hard on that step back after he made a couple, and that opened up the entire driving lane for him.
Yep.
I don't know if we're gonna get that version of James Harden for the rest of this series.
Well, I didn't think we'd get it at all, but here we are.
But he's actually, I think the pendulum has swung a little too far in the other, like the James Harden is washed direction. Like he's still an effective player, right? He's a really good playmaker, has been all series for them. He's been able to create drive and kick opportunities the entire series, right?
Yep.
The whole series. And Miami has been forced to double him and trap him and do things creatively to defend him. But tonight he was just making those shots that we just really haven't seen from him basically since he became a Philadelphia 76er up until tonight. So I don't know if he's going to keep doing it, but boy, did he look like he was really psyched, right? Like he looked amped up. He was really excited. You can almost just see him screaming, just letting loose the fact that he's back. Like this was like a redemption game for James Harden. Whether or not that proves true, I don't know, but he's feeling a lot better going to Miami than he did the first couple times he was here in this series. So could be a problem, definitely. And then Joel Embiid played a bunch of minutes too, and he started to slow down in the second half, just like he did in Game 3. He was a little bit less effective, but that's why you have James Harden to close it out, I suppose. Yeah, credit to them. Obviously, they won the game tonight. Philadelphia deserved to win this game tonight. But if you're the Heat, you need more from those three guys.
Yeah. You look at Philadelphia's numbers, and they got contributions all across the board. Like Danny Green had 11 points, including a 4-point play. Tobias Harris had that dunk that you mentioned on an alley-oop backdoor cut. 10 points for George Niang, his best game of the series by far. Even 5 points from Tybalt, who's really just counted on for his defensive presence. They got a combination of scoring from everybody. Miami was basically Butler and Adebayo with some points here and there from Oladipo, but not enough to really make a difference. Just a couple more shots. Again, this is ultimately what it feels like it boils down to. A couple more shots from Max or Kyle or Tyler Herro. This is a different game. Miami wins it, goes down to Miami up 3-1 with a chance to close out the series at home. Instead, 2 games apiece now. Where should we be on the panic meter? Well, we'll talk about that in the next segment. But before that, just wanted to remind you that this is a show sponsored by Built Bar. Look, summer is coming, and with summer, you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you wherever you're going on family vacations. You can throw them in your bags, in your kids' backpacks when they go to summer camp. Make sure that everyone has a bar so they're fueled for their summer adventures. The best part about Built Bars, they're healthy and delicious. No more sacrificing delicious flavor for health. With Built Bar, you can have both, and it's easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order now. So many great flavors to choose from. You can try their Built Puffs, covered marshmallow flavored, covered in 100% real chocolate. All the bars are covered in chocolate, so they're soft and easy to chew. No chalky aftertaste. You don't even know you're eating a protein bar. It tastes like you're eating a candy bar without any of the guilt that you might associate from doing so. Again, they're the perfect snack when you're on the go, when you need a little fuel, whether you're in between meetings, when you want to fuel a workout, etc. Built Bars are the option for you. So go to Built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCK15. You get 15% off your next order of Built Bar. But use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off, but only if you go to Built.com. Just a reminder that you can always reach us via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com or via Twitter using the hashtag AskLOHeat. Be sure to please subscribe to the show and leave a review. Wes, a lot of different energy over the last week here. Miami up 2-0. No Joel Embiid. And I think Heat Nation was pretty confident. I know you and I both were. I thought they'd steal at least one game in Philadelphia. And while it looked like they had found, well, maybe not the answer, but they adjusted a little bit more effectively to Philadelphia and the presence of Joel Embiid. You mentioned the defense on Embiid, et cetera.
Yeah.
They just wound up falling short. And now 2 games apiece going back into Miami. Should we ask the question right away? Where are you on the panic meter?
I am relatively panicked. If the meter is like not panicked at all, kind of panicked, sort of panicked, really panicked, I'm probably somewhere between sort of panicked and really panicked. You kind of have to lean up against the variance part of this and say, okay, how real is the 3-point shooting problem?
Yep.
How much is it just this freak of nature, like Houston Rockets Game 6 Western Conference Finals, just freaky one-off, never will happen again, even though it happened for 2 straight games. And if there is going to be like regression to the mean and stuff like this, you got to believe that the Heat are going to go the complete other way and shoot the lights out at some point in one of these games in Miami. And on the same side of that, Philly has just shot better than 50% over the last 2 games from beyond the arc. They can't miss a shot. And so you've got to think that they're going to go the other way also and look a little bit closer to what they looked like in the first 2 games. That said, Joel Embiid wasn't a part of those first 2 games when the Heat were shooting well and when the Sixers were not. James Harden wasn't playing like this in the first couple of games, even though he was effective. He wasn't like doing this stuff. So part of it is, okay, the process versus the results here. I think ultimately where I'm kind of falling on this is the Sixers won't shoot as well. The Heat won't shoot as poorly, but the Sixers are still going to be playing well. And the Heat have some things that they need to figure out, namely how they're going to guard both Joel Embiid and James Harden, because they are getting crushed when those 2 guys are on the court together. Crushed right now. They have things that they need to figure out. Right now, Philadelphia has the high ground in this series, even though it's going back to Miami for this next game. But what ultimately I come down to this. This is a real series now. It wouldn't shock me if it went 7 games. I'd almost expect it. And because I think it goes 7 games and we're looking at a game 7 scenario here, then you have to be relatively panicked. I also don't think that this is going to be the Heat getting, basically swept with Joel Embiid involved in this series. I don't think that they're going to lose the next couple of games. I do think they'll bounce back.
Yeah, tonight's game felt winnable. Those shots fairly open. A lot of good looks there to Spo's credit. I mean, what he mentioned in his post-game presser, the looks were there for Max and everybody else. It just weren't falling. You can't completely discredit Philadelphia's defense, but I think a lot of it was just Miami getting in their head and just kind of hoping and praying as they saw that double-digit deficit. It's like, oh, can this shot fall? And then you're kind of rushing a little bit. Maybe you're kind of your head's in it in a way that it shouldn't be. And you're thinking too much as you're trying to get that shot to fall. And it's kind of a recipe for disaster. Kyle in particular missed a lot of good looks that he has made throughout the season, probably just because he's limited physically. He's
he's missing him short. He's missing him short, which is a clear sign that this hamstring is still messing with him. That's another reason though that's another thing that we have to factor into the panic meter is is Kyle Lowry even going to play Game 5? You can make the argument that he would be better off without him playing. And I think that they might make that case to Kyle and say, hey, we need you at 100% because anything less than you at 100% right now is not helping us. And Gabe Vincent might be better off here because he gave him a nice couple minute spurt there when Kyle Lowry went back to the locker room. That's part of it. That's definitely part of it. You could also make the argument that Jimmy Butler has been the best player in this series still.
I'd say that's pretty clear.
Yeah. So the fact that the Heat have the best player in the series right now,
that's your only hope.
Well for the Heat, right? They just I mean, what's Charles Barkley's thing? Driving the bus. Like right now, Jimmy Butler is driving the Heat's bus, and everybody else is still at the bus stop. They haven't even gotten on the bus. Like they're not even.
Max Strus's map is upside down. Like nobody has a right ticket.
Herro slept in.
Yeah, he's on the bus. He's in the bathroom, falling over the toilet or something like that. Yeah, he's just a mess. There's concerns about Tyler. Like, I mean, I know we brought it up in the previous segment, but he does not look quite right. This is a little surprising.
Trapping thing really is screwing with him. It's messing him up.
Yeah, it is. Everybody's a little bit off, and I know things will. To your point, I am also panicking. Not slightly, I'd say not significantly either. Kind of just, I'm in panic mode. I think it's pretty clear. I'm not significantly packing. I do think that there are some concerns here because you're kind of counting on this. You need, at this point, you need to win Game 6. Because you don't want to go in there and back to Philadelphia for games. So you need to win Game 5 because you don't want to go back. Yeah. Because you don't want to go into Game 6 there when they're at home. Like that was the whole point. And this is why Philadelphia has had their backs against the wall, being down that 2-0 hole. They needed to be able to win these 2 games, or if not going down to 3-1 and back to Miami for Game 5, likely to lose the series there, which is why I thought Miami in 5 was a pretty good pick. Now it seems, to your point, I think it's going to go 7 games. I think Miami has to win, obviously, Game 5 for them to have any chance whatsoever, and then see what happens in Game 6. If you can steal the game at 6, that's fine. Obviously, that'd be great. But given how Miami has struggled with their shooting there in Philadelphia, how they have not necessarily gone the foul calls that they might have wanted, and maybe the whistle's a little bit more friendly for Philadelphia, That's going to happen in every home court. You can't. Miami's going to take advantage of it on Tuesday night. That's just the reality of it. Miami just has to win. They have to figure it out if they have any chance right now of moving on.
This is why you played for the number 1 seed, right? Is that in the Game 7 scenario, you've got home court, that edge, and Philadelphia doesn't. You've got the edge. This is why it matters. Miami is being pushed right now. This ultimately, if we really want to zoom out on this, if the Heat advance to the Eastern Conference Finals, them being pushed right now could be the best thing for them because they weren't pushed in Atlanta. If Joel Embiid never came back, they would not have been pushed in this series, and they would have basically played a preseason going into the Eastern Conference Finals. Where Milwaukee and Boston right now are in the middle of a really, really competitive, tough series. Whichever team comes out of that would have the leg up, I think, on the Heat. Even if that was going to go 7, you could talk about rest and whatever, but when you're in that mindset, man, and you're taking that into the Eastern Conference Finals, that beats the team that's just blowing teams out by 15 to 20 points and just cruising to the final. I'd rather have the test earlier on first, and now the Heat are being tested. So we'll see. I'm not trying to do too much of like a positive Heat spin here, but it's an interesting dynamic. This is a much different series than the one that did not have Joel Embiid. That much is clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll be covering Game 5 as always, so make sure to stay tuned for that, and always subscribe to the show so you can get the best coverage available. Just a reminder again that you can always reach out to us via email or via Twitter. We love getting your feedback, and you can always leave comments in the sections there on YouTube. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Locked On NBA show, from the first jump ball of the play-in tournament to the last possession of the NBA Finals. Locked On experts take you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis from all 30 teams. This is David Ramil signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B. Like and subscribe.